Good morning, boys and girls. So today we are starting our realistic eye portrait using values. So we'll be using a couple of the techniques that we talked about, hatching, cross-hatching. We're not really going to be using stippling, but we're going to be using blending. And so let's get started. So I want to start by saying that this is a little tricky. I want you to try your best, but if you follow along, take your time, pause if you need to, yours will turn out just fine. I want you to also remember that this is your first time drawing a realistic eye. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So don't expect it to be perfect, but I want you to try as if you could make it perfect. I can't even make a perfect realistic eye, but we'll try together, okay? So I'm going to go into the center of my paper, okay? So I'm going to start with a football shape. Now, we always want to draw really lightly. Now, Miss Larac will press down a little bit harder because it's hard for you to see my lines. I'm actually going to zoom in a little. See if I can get just the paper. Awesome. So I'm going to start with like a rounded football shape, okay? Now, this is going to be your eye, so you want to make it big enough. You don't want it to be tiny. I'm using a good chunk of my paper. So my lines are pretty sketchy, which means they're not, like, I don't just do one solid line. Okay, here's my football. Now there's lots of different eye shapes, but this is just kind of a almond shape eye that we're going to practice. Okay, so I'm just kind of erasing this extra. Your eraser is going to be your best friend in this, okay? Just erasing some of this extra, but I'm going to use some of it, so I don't need to like make it totally perfect. Awesome, so that's going to be our shape of the eye. So notice it's pretty large in the center of my paper. We're going to be adding things around it, but for the most part, that's where our eye is going to be. If you did it tiny, you're going to have a lot more going on the outside, and we want this to be the focal point. No pun intended, because you'll use your eyes to focus. So now we're going to add our iris. Iris is the colored part of your eye. Blue, green, brown, hazel, whatever you got. That's that part. Now your iris is actually slightly tucked behind your lid. Now, our brain tells us to just go ahead and draw a circle right in the center. And the only time you ever see your entire iris is if your eyes are open super, super wide and you can see it. So it would be like kind of a scared expression on your face. So your iris is actually tucked a little bit behind. So I'm going to show you, you don't have to do the top part, but it's a circle. It's a perfect circle, which nobody can draw a perfect circle. And it's actually tucked a little bit behind. So you're not going to draw this top part. I mean, you could to help you guide, but you'll notice that it's actually a little bit behind it. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to erase this part because I don't need that anymore. That's the colored part of your eye. Now inside that is your pupil, okay? Your pupil can kind of be slightly tucked away too, not too much, because that's the part that absorbs light. It's the part that you see with. So you're actually going to see most of that. So it's like a donut shape, essentially, if you were to be able to see the whole thing. Okay, so this is my circle. Okay. Try to make it as nice and round as you can. Okay. Now, we're going to be shading in the darkest part, which is our pupil, but there's going to be a reflection on your pupil because you want to make it look like it's glossy. Your eyes are wet, so you want to make it look like there's a little bit of a gloss to it. So how I'm going to do that is by creating a moon shape inside there, like that. Now that part I'm not going to color. I kind of messed that up a little bit. I can erase. So make a moon shape in there. Okay, I'm going to do that on this part, and I'm going to lightly do it on this part too. So it's going to be kind of a little bit bigger. So that's going to be like the reflection or the glare in your eye. Awesome. So this is the darkest part of my eye. So I'm going to color it in the darkest. I can use my cross hatching. I would suggest to fill that in. So I'm going to draw my little lines in one direction, close together, and use my pencil harder. I'm going to go around my moon shape. I don't want to color in my moon shape. The more you layer your pencil marks, the darker it's going to get. So right now I'm just hatching, using one stroke. I'm not going up and down and up and down. I'm going one direction. Okay, so I got one that way. Sometimes helps if you turn your paper. This is where it's going to start to make it darker. So when you go the opposite direction. If you want, you can blend it. And kind of give it a crisp outline. We can always come back and make it darker, so I'm just going to leave it with that for now. So now you're starting to see the realistic eye. I'm actually going to color this part in better. Awesome. So this is your colored part of your eye, and you actually have like a darker ring on the outside, usually. Some eyes are different. I know my eye has like a darker ring. My eyes are blue, so I have like a dark blue ring. And then your eyes are actually not just one color. If you were to go into the mirror and look at your eye, you're going to notice different values in your eye. You might even have different colors. Some people even have freckles in their iris. I have one freckle in one of my irises. So I'm going to kind of create this darker ring. Then I'm going to kind of use like a hatching technique for this part, okay? Now, you want to kind of be able to see where this line is. So I'm going to darken that a little. Now, your coloring goes along the outside and along the inside. So it's darkest along the outside and darkest along the inside, and then in between are lighter values. So the way I'm going to do that is essentially hatching along the inside, and I'm going in a radial design, meaning in a circle. So I'm following it around and changing the direction of those lines, going towards the center of the eye. I find it easier to turn my paper. I turn my paper a lot when I draw. Just helps with how your hand works. Okay, it's darkest at the top here. And you're going to do that along the inside, coming out of the pupil toward that. And there's kind of like a white gap in between. For now, we're going to fill that in. Don't color in your moon, go around it. darkest up here because that lid creates a shadow, so I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow there. Doing great. Now we're going to add little lines to kind of, I shouldn't say connect, but go from one side to the other. So use these sparingly. And follow that radial design. Don't go on your moon. If you do, erase it. Okay. Here's where we start to get fun, friends. We can blend. So use your finger. We're actually going to push it around. Stay out of your moon. Go around it, back and forth, and blend. Now, if you did it too dark, mine looks pretty dark right now, you have some options. One is to make your pupil darker by adding more layers of pencil on it. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my eraser, and I'm actually going to carve out some of what I just blended, like little lines, and that radial motion help it look like it's got lighter areas in it. Awesome, it's starting to really come together. It's starting to look like a real eyeball. So now we need to work on the outside of our eye a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my tear duct. My tear duct is where that little weird, gross organ is on the inside of your eye. And that's what produces your tears. It's that little pink thing in the corner. So it's going to be over here, right? So I'm going to actually just kind of darken this so you can see. So that's where your rounded football is. So you're going to kind of darken this and round it like that. See that? Okay. Now, you're going to make a very lightly, you're going to curve your line. This is where your eyeball is, okay? That's your eyeball, and this is where your tear duct is. You actually have, if I were to draw my whole eyeball is like this. It sits behind the skin, right? Otherwise it would pop out. So we need to create that little organ. So I'm just going to do a little line in there like that, like a U shape. I'm going to blend on that. Okay, when I blend on that, I can erase the stuff around it that I kind of went outside of the lines. I'm going to create a little reflection in there too. So I'm going to erase a little bit of it so it looks like a tear duct.